Florida Congressman Brian Mast going a step further. The Republican lawmaker introducing a bill to disband UNRWA, and he joins us now live to discuss that. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, first off, can you break down for me your initial thoughts when you heard the allegations against UNRWA and several of its employees?
The allegations against UNRWA was not totally surprising in the wake of October 7, given that a lot of people don't realize 99% of UNRWA is actually Palestinian employees. They're Palestinian individuals that work for UNRWA. You're talking about 30,000 people. So when you're talking about that quantity, there is literally an estimate of somewhere between 10 to 15% of them being a direct part of one of the terrorist organizations in Gaza, that being Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Al-Aqsa, Martyrs Brigade, Lion's Den, or in direct support of them. So this was not a surprising allegation when they said these individuals were literally pulling bodies out, or they're storing weapons under these UNRWA facilities, or rocket launchers, or they're housing these hostages, you name it. It's not a totally surprising allegation.
Tell me about your bill that you have introduced and what you hope will happen, what inspired you, all of that.
UNRWA is a perfect example of a double standard. We know that there are people in a refugee status throughout the globe, whether Sudanese or Syrian or Rohingya or various people. And UNRWA is specifically an agency for Palestinians. They're given a separate definition of refugee status. They're given a separate line item, a separate everything under the United Nations. And that separate entity really has failed the world in dealing with the relationship between Gaza, the West Bank, and Israel. There's constantly teachers that are teaching Jew hate in UNRWA schools. There's constantly rockets and bombs found in UNRWA facilities. There's constantly tunnels found underneath UNRWA facilities. And that's that direct tie of this organization that's supposed to be working for peace, but has clearly been apart for decades on being on the other side of peace.
What do you say to people possibly on the other side of the political aisle who don't agree and say that UNRWA needs the funding to help the people there in Gaza and in general? What do you say to them?
So we had a hearing in the House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee this week and talked about that exact issue. And I can speak for what people on the other side of the aisle said directly. And while I might say, hey, we should stop all funding to UNRWA and eliminate it because of these actions, the other side is saying, we cannot make any excuse for UNRWA. We can't make any excuse for what their employees have done, but there is no red line for bad behavior when it comes to UNRWA. It doesn't matter if it was 100 employees or 1,000 employees of UNRWA that did this. There's no red line because UNRWA is so unique and they have to be the only ones that do it. And so literally they have said, I can't make an excuse for them, but I want American tax dollars to continue going to UNRWA. And I think that's absolutely unacceptable.
Why is it so important, in your opinion, for people in America to show their support for Israel against the Hamas terrorists, especially right now?
Look, Israel is America's biggest aircraft carrier in the Middle East. Our shared common values, human rights for all, democratic values, democracy, the things that we work towards, the relationship that we have, it is a vital relationship for us in the Middle East, and securing our interests there, working to have some kind of peace in the region. President Trump worked a great deal on this, whether you're talking about the Abraham Accords or when he was president, cutting off funding to UNRWA, which he did, cutting off funding to the Houthis in Yemen. And then we see an administration come in and restore the funding to UNRWA, restore the funding to Yemen and the Houthis. And this is the situation that we find ourselves in, is we have to be in America that identifies our friends, identifies our allies, and identifies our enemies and those that work against what we believe and who we are. And that's what this relationship is about, in my opinion.
Any other legislation that you are preparing in relation to the situation going on there in the Middle East?
Yes. So, and this legislation goes back to UNRWA that I will discuss right now. On January 26th, the Biden administration made an announcement that even though they restored funding to UNRWA, they were now going to cut off funding to UNRWA or pause it, as they said. Now, it turns out that that was really quite a shell deal or a backhanded announcement that they made, because they waited until after January 24. And that's not a date that means a lot to most people, but January 24 was a day that they completed about a $141 million transfer of U.S. taxpayer monies to UNRWA. So they waited until they completed this transfer of money to UNRWA of $141 million. Then they said, hey, now we're going to pause funding for this agency and see what's going on. So really, in my opinion, it's quite a shell game. And we have a piece of legislation that would say that needs to be clawed back immediately.
Florida Congressman Brian Mast, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. Anything else you want to add before I let you go?
I'd just say thank you for paying attention to this issue, vital for national security, and I wish you all the best.
All right. Thank you again for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, please click like and subscribe. I will be back on YouTube with more exclusive content, so stay tuned.